Well, here we are at the end of a week. Pray that your week was successful, however you might define that. I pray that you had a good week. I pray that you're looking forward to a good weekend, perhaps with friends and family. Perhaps you have some events planned. I just thank you so much for taking the time to be with me today in Romans chapter 1, and we're in verse 13. Let me change the screen here for us. We're in verse 13 today, and Paul is continuing to end this introduction, which goes down to verse 17, and he's been describing his prayer. We've been learning from Paul's prayer for the Roman church and getting some pointers, I guess, on how to perhaps we should pray. And now he's going to address them directly and talk about is God's will and Paul's mission. So I think Paul is at this point anticipating a question that might come from the saints in Rome, which is, Paul, you say you have been waiting and you've been longing to see us and you've been intending to come and you're praying to come. What's delayed you? What has kept you, Paul? And he answers that question here. He doesn't want them to be unaware. He wants to be knowing what's going on. We can, I guess in modern terms, we call this transparency. He's being transparent about his ministry and what he's doing. And he says, brothers and sisters, love the way he addresses them. This tenderness, this familiarity, being part of God's people. He says, I've often planned to come to you. So Paul's gone beyond several times. He says here often. He's gone beyond just prayer. I say just prayer. I don't mean to diminish it. But he's gone beyond praying. He's gone beyond his longing. And he's actually made some plans periodically to come and see them. We don't know the details of those plans. We don't know when those plans were. He doesn't share that with us, but he does share the fact that he had definite plans from time to come to them. But he's been prevented so far from doing that. You know, I think of that scene in the book of Acts where Paul has a dream and he sees a man of Macedonia calling him over to come out from Asia Minor and come into northern Greece and that area of Macedonia and come and help. And perhaps Paul has been directed elsewhere by the Spirit. I don't doubt that he has. If you look at his first and second and third missionary journeys, how the Spirit directed him and guided him. So he didn't want to violate that. Remember, in Paul's prayer, he's very careful to acknowledge God's will and defer to how God will allow him to do that. Perhaps he'll get a specific revelation from God through the Spirit to go to Rome. Perhaps it'll be providential. And if you know Paul's history and you know how he got to Rome, we see God's providence in bringing them to Rome at the right time and in the right way, but certainly not in a way that Paul would have preferred. So he says that he planned, but had been prevented from coming to them, so that I may obtain some fruit among you, also just as among the rest of the Gentiles. So Paul is coming there intentionally. He wants to gather what he's calling fruit, the results of the ministry, the results of his ministry there, and the results which will be similar to the results that he's gotten from the rest of the Gentiles that he's preached to. So Paul particularly has in mind the Gentiles in this church. We know it's not just Gentiles, but he has particularly in mind the Gentiles here. What is that fruit? Well, when we look at other books that Paul has written, other epistles, we see in Philippians, for example, that the Philippians had sent Paul a what we call a cash gift. They sent him money. When we look at the 2 Corinthians, we see the church in Macedonia also collecting money, collecting money not for Paul personally, not to support his ministry, but to send to Jerusalem. So when Paul talks about fruit, I think he's often talking about finances, often talking about money. But also along with that, when Paul collected money for the church in Rome or Jerusalem, he also sent it along with emissaries from the churches that were providing the input, the income for that church. So they were not only the fruit, financial fruit, but also the fruit of his ministry, the saved people that were coming to visit in Jerusalem. I think we have the same thing in mind here. Paul is going to be asking them for financial and personal support, I think, as we go through this. But let's just reflect on this a little bit. Paul, again, is giving us a really good example that we could put into practice in our prayers, leaving, as I said before, I think Monday, leaving it up to God to the how and when. We certainly can pray for the what. Paul doesn't question God. He doesn't call God to account, so to speak. He just says he's been prevented so far. He doesn't give us the details here. And sometimes God's providential guidance and direction is we don't understand it, and we shouldn't ask about it. We should trust God. We should put it in his hands and acknowledge our faithfulness and our confidence in him. We need to yield to God's wisdom. Now, I think a good definition of wisdom from God is that he gets the best possible ends using the best possible means. That's beyond us, right? That is beyond us. We think we know what's best. We think we know how it should be done. We sometimes tell God that in our prayers, as I confessed for myself. But the fact of the matter is that God, in his wisdom, when he burdens you with a prayer, he is also going to answer that prayer in his time and in his way. He arranges everything around us. I don't think there is, R.C. Sproul has said that there's one maverick molecule in the universe. I don't think there's one incident that God is not aware of. I think God orchestrates all things according to his good pleasure and his good will. And that is the essence of providence, that history, events, circumstances, even the most trivial things, all work together for the good, as Paul says in Romans 8:28. And we need to trust that. Trust God's wisdom, trust God's love, trust him in directing our love toward others, both the how and the what of that, and trust him to answer our prayers in his way and in his time. So take that into the weekend with you, brothers and sisters. Again, if you're journaling through this, if you're making notes as you go through here, reflect on that and God's providence in answering prayers according to his wisdom and love. And just meditate on that. I think it will give you a lot of confidence, a lot of hope, and a lot of enthusiasm, I'd say, for prayer, and to see how God will answer those prayers that he's burdened you with. So we'll begin again on Monday, and we'll continue through this introductory part of the book of Romans. Hope you're enjoying this, and hope you're being edified and encouraged and educated as we go through it. God bless you.